r/pettyrevenge coworker stole my client, so I got them fired. The conference room door slammed shut behind Jake, and I watched through the glass walls as he shook hands with Mr. Chen from Pinnacle Industries, my client. The client I'd been courting for 7 months. The six-figure deal that was supposed to change everything for me. Congratulations on closing the Pinnacle account, Jake. Sarah from accounting chirped as she walked past my desk. I heard it's the biggest deal our team has landed this quarter. I gripped my coffee mug so hard I thought it might shatter. 20 minutes ago, I'd been sitting in that same conference room, walking Mr. Chen through the final presentation slides I'd spent weeks perfecting. Every chart, every projection, every carefully crafted solution tailored specifically to Pinnacle's manufacturing challenges, all my work. Then Jake had burst in with his $1 million smile and that expensive suit his daddy probably bought him. Sorry I'm late, Mr. Chen. Traffic was murder. Jake had slid into the seat next to me like he belonged there. I hope my colleague here has been taking good care of you while I handle the back-end negotiations with your procurement team. Back-end negotiations? What back-end negotiations? I'd been the only point of contact with Pinnacle for months. I'd driven to their facility in Newark 6 times, sat through countless Zoom calls during my lunch breaks, and even worked weekends to customize our standard package to fit their specific needs. But suddenly, Jake was explaining our strategy and referencing conversations that never happened. Mr. Chen had looked confused for a moment, glancing between us. I thought. The important thing, Jake had interrupted smoothly, is that we're all on the same team here at Morrison & Associates. Isn't that right? He'd shot me a look that was pure steel wrapped in silk. I should have spoken up. Should have corrected him right there. But Mr. Chen was nodding along, and Jake was already diving into the presentation, my presentation, like he'd created every slide himself. I sat there like a deer in headlights, watching 7 months of my life get repackaged and sold by someone who couldn't even pronounce Pinnacle's subsidiary companies correctly. Now I was staring at my computer screen, trying to process what had just happened. The commission on that deal would have been enough to finally make a real dent in my student loans. The promotion that was supposed to come with landing a client that size would have meant an actual salary instead of this base pay plus commission joke that barely covered my rent in this overpriced city. Hey, champ. Jake appeared at my cubicle, loosening his tie with the satisfied air of someone who just won a game I didn't even know we were playing. Thanks for the assist in there. Really appreciate you letting me take point on the close. You know how these big clients are, they want to deal with senior team members. Senior team members? We'd started at Morrison & Associates the same month 2 years ago. The only difference was that Jake's last name was Morrison, as in, the founder's nephew. That was my client, Jake. My voice came out steadier than I felt. He leaned against my cubicle wall, blocking the view from the rest of the office. Our client, buddy. We're all team players here, right? Besides, I'm sure there'll be other opportunities for you to contribute. As he walked away, already on his phone probably bragging to someone about his big win, I realized something important. Jake had just made the biggest mistake of his privileged life. He thought I was just going to roll over and take it. He was very, very wrong. The rest of the day crawled by in a haze of fake congratulations and pitying looks. Every time someone mentioned Jake's big win, I felt my jaw clench tighter. By 5 p.m., most of the office had cleared out, but I stayed at my desk, staring at my computer screen and trying to figure out my next move. Still here, kiddo. I looked up to see Margaret from HR hovering near my cubicle, her reading glasses dangling from that beaded chain she always wore. Margaret had been at Morrison & Associates since before the company went digital, and she had a reputation for being both fair and terrifyingly thorough. Just finishing up some paperwork, I said, minimizing the window where I'd been obsessively reviewing my email trail with Pinnacle Industries, 7 months of documented proof that I'd been their only point of contact. Heard about the Pinnacle account. That was a tough break. She lowered her voice. Between you and me, I've seen your meeting logs. You put in serious hours on that one. My heart jumped. You keep track of our client meetings. Honey, I keep track of everything. Expense reports, travel requests, client entertainment receipts, all of it crosses my desk eventually. Has to, for tax purposes. She adjusted her glasses. Interesting things turn up when you're paying attention. There was something in her tone that made me sit up straighter. What kind of interesting things? Margaret glanced around the nearly empty office, then leaned closer. Let's just say some people around here think the company credit card is their personal piggy bank. 5-star dinners for client meetings that our scheduling system shows never happened. Hotel rooms in the city when the client is local. Creative accounting, you might call it. She straightened up, her expression neutral again. Anyway, have a good night. Oh, and remember, all expense reports from the last fiscal year are being audited next week. Standard procedure when someone's up for promotion to senior associate. We have to make sure everything's squeaky clean for the board review. After she left, I sat in the quiet office, my mind racing. Jake was up for the promotion that should have been mine after landing Pinnacle. And if Margaret was hinting at what I thought she was hinting at. I pulled up our internal expense system and navigated to the team reports section. Technically, I wasn't supposed to have access to other people's expense details, but our IT department wasn't exactly cutting edge. The same password that got me into client files worked for most of the internal systems. Jake's expense reports from the past 6 months filled my screen, and my eyes widened as I scrolled through them. Dinner at Le Bernardin for $347, marked as client entertainment with Pinnacle Industries. But I had been with Mr. Chen that night at a Denny's near his hotel, going over preliminary numbers while he ate a Grand Slam breakfast for dinner because of his jet lag. Another entry, 2 nights at the Plaza Hotel, $850 per night, marked as extended client negotiations with Pinnacle leadership team. The dates fell on a weekend when I knew for a fact Mr. Chen was back in Ohio for his daughter's graduation. I'd rescheduled our Monday meeting because of it. There were dozens of entries like this, all flagged as Pinnacle-related expenses, all dating back to when Jake must have realized how big this deal was going to be. He hadn't just stolen my client at the last minute, he'd been positioning himself as the relationship manager for months, at least on paper. My hands were shaking as I started taking screenshots. This wasn't just unethical, it was fraud. Corporate fraud that could get someone criminally charged, not just fired. Jake hadn't just stolen my promotion. He'd been stealing from the company while doing it. And thanks to Margaret's little hint about the audit, I now knew exactly when and how to make sure his creative accounting came to light. I spent the next 3 days walking on eggshells, terrified that Jake would somehow figure out what I discovered. Every time he looked in my direction, I was convinced he could see the guilt written across my face. But Jake was too busy basking in his stolen glory to pay attention to me. The promotion announcement was scheduled for Friday morning. I watched Jake get his haircut during lunch on Wednesday, saw him shopping for a new tie on Thursday. He'd even started parking in the senior associate section of the garage, like the promotion was already his. "You seem nervous," my cubicle neighbor Lisa observed Thursday afternoon. "You've been jumping every time your phone buzzes." She wasn't wrong. I'd been refreshing my email obsessively, waiting for Margaret to send out the audit notification she'd mentioned. But there was still no word about the expense report review, and I was starting to panic that I'd misunderstood her hint entirely. "Just caffeine jitters," I lied, taking another sip of my 4th coffee of the day. That's when my computer pinged with a calendar invite that made my blood freeze. Pinnacle Industries follow-up strategy meeting, Friday 2 p.m. Jake had scheduled it for right after the promotion announcement, and he'd included half the senior management team. He was planning to parade around his stolen success in front of everyone who mattered. But the worst part? He'd included me on the invite with a note: "Thanks for your supporting role on this account. Looking forward to your insights on the implementation phase." Supporting role. 7 months of my life reduced to a supporting role. I was still staring at the meeting invite when Jake appeared at my desk again, that same smug expression plastered across his face. "Hope you can make it Friday," he said, loud enough for the surrounding cubicles to hear. "I know how much you enjoyed working under my direction on this project. Figured you'd want to be there when I present the expansion strategy to the leadership team." Under his direction? I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. "Actually," Jake continued, "I've been meaning to thank you properly. All those meetings you sat in on, the notes you took, really valuable groundwork. Not everyone's cut out for the big picture strategy stuff, but you've got a real talent for the detail work." He was rewriting history in real time, and doing it publicly. By tomorrow, everyone in the office would remember me as Jake's assistant on the Pinnacle deal, not the person who'd actually landed it. "Of course I'll be there," I managed to say through gritted teeth. "Excellent. Oh, and where's something nice? There'll probably be photos for the company newsletter. The Pinnacle team, that sort of thing." He straightened his already perfect tie. "This could be really good exposure for you." After he left, I sat there shaking with rage. It wasn't enough for Jake to steal my client and my promotion, now he wanted to parade me around like a trophy, proof of his leadership abilities. The supporting player grateful for crumbs from his table. That's when Margaret's email finally arrived. "All staff notice. Quarterly expense audit begins tomorrow at 9 a.m. Please ensure all receipts and documentation are readily available. Any discrepancies must be reported immediately per company policy 847-B." My heart hammered as I read the last line. Audit results will be reviewed by senior management before any personnel decisions are finalized. The promotion announcement was scheduled for 10 a.m. If Margaret's audit started at 9. I glanced across the office at Jake, who was on yet another phone call, probably lining up more congratulations. He had no idea what was coming. No idea that his house of cards was about to collapse spectacularly. But I was about to learn that Margaret's audit was just the beginning. Because Jake had been far busier than I'd realized, and tomorrow was going to be full of surprises for both of us. Friday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train. I got to the office at 7:30 a.m., a full hour and a half before Margaret's audit was supposed to begin, but I wasn't the only early bird. Through the glass doors, I could see lights already on in the senior management wing. My stomach dropped as I spotted Dave Morrison, the founder himself, walking through the hallway with a stack of folders and a kind of grim expression that meant someone's day was about to get very, very bad. "You're here early." I jumped, nearly spilling coffee all over my keyboard. Margaret stood behind me, but instead of her usual warm smile, her face was all business. "Couldn't sleep," I admitted. She glanced toward the management wing. Neither could some other people, apparently. Interesting how these things work out. Before I could ask what she meant, she was gone, disappearing into her office with an armload of files that looked suspiciously like expense reports. By 8:45, the office was buzzing with nervous energy. Word had gotten around about the audit, and I watched coworkers frantically organizing their desk drawers and pulling up digital receipts. But Jake looked completely relaxed, chatting with Sarah from accounting about his weekend plans. "I'm thinking about finally pulling the trigger on that Hamptons house rental," he was saying. "Now that the promotion's coming through, might as well live a little, you know." The confidence in his voice made my skin crawl. He had no idea that Margaret had probably been dissecting his expense reports since dawn. At exactly 9 a.m., Margaret's voice crackled through the office intercom. "Jake Morrison, please report to conference room B immediately. Bring all documentation related to client expenses for the past 12 months. The casual chatter in the office died instantly. Being called to conference room B was never good news. It was where they held disciplinary meetings and exit interviews. I watched Jake's face cycle through confusion, then concern, then forced nonchalance. "Probably just a formality," he announced to no one in particular. "You know how thorough they have to be with promotions." But I caught the slight tremor in his voice, the way he tugged at his collar before walking toward the conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see Margaret waiting inside with Dave Morrison and Linda Hughes, the head of legal. My phone buzzed with a text from my college roommate. "How's the revenge plot going? Did corporate Jake get his comeuppance yet?" I told her the whole story over drinks Wednesday night, and she'd been invested in the outcome ever since. But as I watched Jake disappear into conference room B, I realized I might have underestimated just how big this was going to get. 20 minutes passed. Then 40. Through the conference room glass, I could see Jake's animated hand gestures growing more frantic. At one point, Linda Hughes held up what looked like a credit card statement, and Jake's face went completely white. "This is better than cable," Lisa whispered from the cubicle next to mine. "Think they found something good?" Before I could answer, my computer pinged with an email that made my blood freeze. It was from Dave Morrison himself, sent to the entire company. The 10 a.m. personnel announcement has been postponed indefinitely due to an ongoing internal investigation. Normal business operations will continue. Any questions should be directed to HR. An ongoing internal investigation. Those weren't words you used for simple expense report discrepancies. This was bigger than I'd thought. But my relief was short-lived, because 30 seconds later, another email landed in my inbox, this one addressed only to me. Please report to conference room A at your earliest convenience. Margaret Henley, Human Resources. My mouth went dry. Conference room A was right next to conference room B, where Jake was still trapped with the legal team. Whatever was happening, I was about to become part of it. And I had no idea if that was going to save me or destroy me. My legs felt like jelly as I walked toward conference room A, trying to look casual while my heart hammered against my ribs. Through the glass wall of conference room B, I caught a glimpse of Jake slumped in his chair, his expensive tie loosened and his face flushed red. Dave Morrison was leaning forward, pointing at something on the table that I couldn't see. I knocked on conference room A's door, and Margaret's voice called out, "Come in." She was sitting alone at the long conference table, a laptop open in front of her and several manila folders spread out like she was preparing for war. But what made my stomach drop was the stack of printed emails beside her elbow, emails that looked suspiciously familiar. "Please, sit down." Margaret's tone was professional but not unkind. "I want to discuss the Pinnacle Industries account with you." I lowered myself into the chair across from her, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Of course. Happy to help with whatever you need." "I'm sure you are." She opened one of the folders. "According to our records, you've been the primary contact for Pinnacle Industries since January. 7 months of documented meetings, emails, and phone calls. Is that accurate?" "Yes, that's right." "And yet, yesterday Jake Morrison submitted his final expense report for the Pinnacle account, claiming primary relationship management for the past 6 months. She slid a paper across the table. "Can you explain this discrepancy?" I stared down at Jake's expense summary. The numbers were staggering, over $12,000 in client entertainment and relationship-building activities with Pinnacle Industries. Dinners I'd never attended, hotel stays for meetings that happened in our office, transportation costs for trips I'd never taken. I'm not sure what this is," I said carefully. "I handled all the Pinnacle meetings myself." Margaret nodded, making a note on her legal pad. "That's what I thought. Which brings me to my next question." She pulled out another document. "Did you access the company expense reporting system on Tuesday evening after hours?" My blood turned to ice. She knew. Somehow, she knew I'd been digging through Jake's records. I started, then stopped. There was no point in lying, IT would have logs of everything. "Yes, I did." "And what were you looking for?" This was it. The moment where I either came clean or tried to cover my tracks. But looking at Margaret's expression, I realized she already knew the answer. This wasn't an interrogation, it was a test. "I was looking for proof that Jake had been falsifying his expense reports," I said quietly. Margaret leaned back in her chair. "Proof of falsification is a serious accusation." "What made you suspect that?" "Because I knew for a fact that he hadn't been working with Pinnacle the way his expenses suggested. I was there for every meeting, every phone call. Jake barely knew Mr. Chen's name until this week." "I see." Margaret made another note. "And what did you plan to do with this proof?" The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. I could hear voices getting louder in conference room B, Jake's among them. "I don't know," I said honestly. I was angry. He stole my client, my promotion, everything I'd worked for. I just wanted someone to know the truth. The truth. Margaret closed the folder. "That's interesting, because we received an anonymous tip on Wednesday morning about irregularities in Jake's expense reports. Someone who was very familiar with the Pinnacle account timeline." "An anonymous tip?" "I hadn't sent any anonymous tip. I'd barely decided what to do with the information I'd found." "That wasn't me," I said. "No," Margaret agreed, "it wasn't. Which is why I wanted to talk to you directly." She opened her laptop and turned it toward me. "Because Jake Morrison's expense fraud is just the tip of the iceberg. And you, whether you realize it or not, have stumbled into the middle of something much bigger." On her screen was an email thread between Jake and someone with the initials, PC. The subject line read, "Pinnacle Competitor Intelligence, Final Payment." My blood ran cold as I realized what I was looking at, and why Margaret's expression had turned so serious. This wasn't just about stolen clients and fake expense reports anymore. I stared at the email thread on Margaret's laptop, my brain struggling to process what I was seeing. The timestamps showed dozens of messages between Jake and PC, dating back 3 months, right around when my meetings with Mr. Chen had started gaining serious momentum. "PC?" I asked, though something in my gut already knew the answer. "Paul Chen. Mr. Chen's son, who happens to work for Pinnacle's biggest competitor, Meridian Industries." Margaret scrolled down through the email chain. "It seems Jake has been feeding them inside information about his father's company's expansion plans, manufacturing vulnerabilities, and budget constraints." The words hit me like a physical blow. That's corporate espionage. Industrial espionage, to be precise. And according to these emails, Jake's been paid quite handsomely for his services. $15,000 over the past 3 months, which explains how he could afford all those fake business expenses without raising red flags with his personal finances. I felt sick. All those nights I'd spent perfecting proposals for Mr. Chen, thinking I was building trust and demonstrating our company's value. Meanwhile, Jake had been selling every detail to their competition. Every strategy I'd developed, every weakness in Pinnacle's current system that I'd identified, it had all been handed over to Meridian Industries like a gift-wrapped playbook. "But how did you find this?" I asked. "These look like personal emails." Margaret's expression hardened. Jake made the mistake of using his company laptop for his side business. When IT flagged his expense report access patterns on Tuesday night, apparently he'd been going back and editing old reports to cover his tracks. They did a routine security sweep of his device. Through the glass wall, I could see Jake pacing now, his hands pressed against his head while Dave Morrison held up what looked like a printed email chain. Wait, I said, the timeline clicking into place. If you found this Wednesday morning, why did you let him go through with stealing my client yesterday? Because we needed to see how far he'd go. The FBI, yes, we've involved federal authorities, wanted to observe his behavior when he thought he'd gotten away with everything. Margaret closed the laptop. Your client presentation yesterday was essentially a sting operation. Mr. Chen was briefed beforehand about what was happening. My head was spinning. Mr. Chen knew. He knew Jake was selling information to his competitor. He's known for weeks. Turns out Meridian Industries got a little too aggressive with their inside knowledge and made some proposals that were suspiciously similar to your preliminary drafts. Mr. Chen put the pieces together and contacted us directly. So the deal is still yours. Jake's little performance yesterday was just theater to see if he'd continue the charade even after committing federal crimes. Margaret leaned forward. But here's where things get complicated for you. My stomach dropped. Complicated how? The FBI wants to interview everyone who had access to the Pinnacle files. That includes you. And while your expense report snooping was technically unauthorized access to company systems, it's the kind of thing that federal investigators notice when they're building a case. Are you saying I'm in trouble? I'm saying you need a lawyer. A good one. Because while you were gathering evidence of Jake's expense fraud, you stumbled into an active federal investigation. Your digital fingerprints are all over the same systems that Jake used for his criminal activities. The room felt like it was tilting. In trying to expose Jake's lies, I'd somehow made myself look like his accomplice. But I didn't know anything about the espionage, I said desperately. I was just trying to prove he stole my client. I believe you. But belief and proof are different things in federal court. Margaret gathered her folders. The good news is that your email trail with Mr. Chen actually helps establish the timeline of Jake's crimes. The bad news is that you're now a witness in a criminal case that could take months to resolve. What does that mean for my job? For the promotion? Margaret's smile was grim. Let's just say the promotion announcement isn't the only thing that's been postponed indefinitely. The legal consultation that Margaret insisted I schedule turned into the most expensive and terrifying hour of my week. David Kellerman, Esquire, had the kind of mahogany office that screamed, "This will cost you," and his retainer fee alone wiped out what little savings I'd managed to scrape together over the past year. The government's case against your coworker is solid, he explained, sliding a copy of the federal complaint across his polished desk. Industrial espionage, wire fraud, conspiracy, they're throwing the book at him. But your situation is more nuanced. I scanned the document, seeing Jake's name highlighted in yellow throughout the 23-page filing. How nuanced? You access company systems without authorization to investigate financial irregularities. Under normal circumstances, that might be a simple HR matter. But because those same systems were used in a commission of federal crimes, the FBI has to explore every possible connection. He leaned back in his leather chair. They need to verify you weren't working with Morrison. But I was trying to expose him. Which, ironically, makes your behavior look more suspicious, not less. Think about it from their perspective. You've discovered evidence of expense fraud right when they're building an espionage case. Either you're legitimately innocent, or you're very clever at creating plausible cover stories. My phone buzzed with another text from my mom asking how the big promotion announcement had gone. I'd been dodging her calls for 3 days, unable to explain that instead of celebrating a career breakthrough, I was hiring criminal defense attorneys. What's the worst-case scenario? I asked. Federal conspiracy charges carry a maximum of 5 years. But that's extreme. I don't think they have evidence to support charging you with anything. The real problem is the publicity and the employment complications. Employment complications? Kellerman pulled out another folder. Morrison and Associates has placed you on administrative leave pending the federal investigation. Standard procedure when an employee becomes involved in a criminal case. You'll keep receiving basic health benefits, but no salary. The words hit me like ice water. No salary meant no rent payments, no student loan payments, no anything payments. I'd been living paycheck to paycheck before this nightmare started. How long could administrative leave last? Federal cases move slowly. 6 months would be optimistic. Could easily be a year or more if it goes to trial. A year without income while paying attorney fees. I calculated the math in my head and felt nauseous. My emergency fund would last maybe 2 months if I cut every possible expense. There's something else, Kellerman continued. The FBI wants to interview you again next week. This time with prosecutors present. I thought you said I wasn't being charged with anything. You're not, yet. But they're trying to pressure you into cooperation. They want details about Morrison's behavior, his relationships with other employees, anything that might support their broader case. He paused. The problem is, extensive cooperation could make you unemployable in your industry. Corporate America doesn't like witnesses in federal crime cases. I thought about my carefully planned career trajectory, the promotion I've been chasing, the student loans that would outlive me at this rate. So my choices are to cooperate and destroy my career, or not cooperate and potentially face charges myself. That's not an inaccurate summary. My phone rang, Margaret from HR. I'd been expecting this call since Monday. I have to take this, I told Kellerman, stepping into the hallway. Hi Margaret. I'm calling with an update on your employment status. The company has decided to extend your administrative leave through the end of the year, pending resolution of the federal investigation. End of the year. 4 months without pay, minimum. However, she continued, there's been an interesting development. We've had 3 clients specifically request to work with you on their accounts, including a potential deal that could be worth even more than Pinnacle. Apparently word has gotten around about what really happened with the Morrison situation. My heart jumped. What does that mean for my leave status? Unfortunately, company policy is clear, we can't have active witnesses in federal cases managing client relationships. But these clients have indicated they'd be willing to wait for the legal situation to resolve itself. They'd wait for me. Seems your reputation for integrity has made quite an impression. Funny how these things work out. As I hung up, I realized Margaret was right. It was funny how things worked out. Jake's attempt to destroy my career might have accidentally made it stronger. But first, I had to survive the next 4 months without income while federal prosecutors decided whether I was a victim or a criminal. The first month of administrative leave felt like being trapped in purgatory. I'd wake up at my usual time out of habit, then remember I had nowhere to go. My LinkedIn profile started attracting recruiters, but every conversation ended the same way once I mentioned the ongoing legal situation. We'll definitely keep you in mind for future opportunities, they'd say, which was corporate speak for, call us when the FBI isn't investigating you. My savings account dwindled at an alarming rate. Rent, utilities, student loans, attorney fees, the math was brutal and unforgiving. I'd started picking up freelance graphic design work, dusting off skills from college that paid a fraction of my sales salary. $20 logos for small businesses weren't going to keep me afloat much longer. But the worst part wasn't the money, it was the isolation. My former coworkers avoided my calls, probably terrified that associating with me would somehow contaminate their own careers. The FBI interview had gone well, according to Kellerman, but, well, in federal investigation terms apparently meant they don't think you're a criminal, but they're not ready to clear you either. That's when the phone call came that changed everything. Is this the person who exposed the Morrison situation? The voice was unfamiliar, professional but guarded. Who is this? My name is Rachel Torres. I'm a senior investigator with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I'd like to meet with you about Jake Morrison's activities at your former company. The SEC. My mouth went dry. I thought this was just an industrial espionage case. It's become more complicated than that. We have reason to believe Morrison's activities extended beyond selling client information. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? I found myself sitting in another sterile conference room 24 hours later, this time in a federal building downtown. Rachel Torres looked like she could stare down a charging bull without blinking, and the stack of documents in front of her was twice the size of what the FBI had shown me. We've been investigating unusual trading patterns in several stocks related to companies that Morrison and Associates represents, she began without preamble. Someone has been making very profitable short positions right before your company's clients announced major setbacks or lost contracts. Short positions. Betting that stock prices will fall. It's perfectly legal if you're making educated guesses. It's securities fraud if you're trading on inside information. She opened a folder. 3 separate instances over the past 8 months where someone made significant money betting against your client's success. The timeline hit me like a truck. That's right around when Jake started paying attention to my bigger accounts. Exactly. We think Morrison was using his access to client information to make trades through offshore accounts. The industrial espionage was just one revenue stream, he was also betting against the same companies he was supposed to be helping. I thought about all the clients I'd lost over the past year, deals that had fallen apart at the last minute for reasons I'd never understood. How much money are we talking about? Conservatively. $500,000 in illegal trading profits. Torres leaned forward. But here's where it gets interesting for you. Someone else has been making trades too, small positions, but consistently profitable. Same offshore banking network, same suspicious timing. My blood turned to ice. Are you accusing me of? I'm not accusing you of anything yet. But someone with access to your client files has been making money from information that wasn't public knowledge. If it wasn't you. She let the implication hang in the air. Then someone else at the company is involved. Or someone was using your access credentials without your knowledge. Torres slid a document across the table. This is a record of trades made using an account that was opened with your social security number 3 months ago. I stared at the trading statements, seeing my name attached to transactions I'd never made, profits I'd never seen. Someone had stolen my identity to commit securities fraud, and the paper trail led directly back to me. The good news is that the money from these trades is sitting in an account you've never accessed. The bad news is that it's sitting in an account with your name on it. How is that possible? Someone very clever has been setting you up to take the fall for their crimes. The question is whether you're going to help us figure out who, or whether you're going to become their next victim. As I walked out of the federal building, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop digging or the next account we open will have drugs in it instead of money. The anonymous threat felt like ice water in my veins. I stood on the courthouse steps, reading the message over and over while federal agents walked past me like I was invisible. Someone was watching me closely enough to know I just met with the SEC, someone who knew exactly how to make my life infinitely worse. My hands shook as I called Kellerman from the parking garage. They're setting me up, I said without preamble. Someone opened trading accounts in my name, and now they're threatening me to keep quiet. Slow down. What kind of threats? I read him the text message, and his sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know about how serious this was. We need to meet immediately. Don't go home, don't go anywhere familiar. Meet me at the Starbucks on 5th Street in 30 minutes. The coffee shop was crowded with afternoon business traffic, which Kellerman said was perfect, harder for anyone to eavesdrop or follow us. He looked more worried than I'd ever seen him, constantly glancing around like he expected federal agents to materialize from behind the pastry display. Identity theft for securities fraud is a federal crime that carries serious prison time, he said quietly. But the threats suggest this goes beyond financial crimes. Someone's desperate enough to intimidate a witness in an active federal investigation. What does that mean for me? It means we're calling the FBI right now, and you're going into witness protection protocols until they can figure out who's behind this. He pulled out his phone. This isn't just about your career anymore, this is about your safety. Witness protection. For how long? However long it takes. Could be weeks, could be months. He started dialing. The alternative is waiting to see if whoever sent that text decides you know too much. 20 minutes later, Agent Sarah Park from the FBI was sitting across from us, examining my phone with the kind of intensity usually reserved for bomb disposal. She was younger than I'd expected, but something about her calm efficiency made me feel marginally safer. The number is registered to a burner phone purchased with cash in Newark last week, she said. But the real concern is the timing. Only 5 people knew about your SEC meeting today, you, MS. Torres, myself, your attorney, and my supervisor. Are you saying there's a leak in the federal government? I'm saying someone has access to information they shouldn't have. Which means the corruption at your former company might extend further than we initially thought. She handed my phone back. We're putting you in a safe house while we investigate. A safe house? Like in the movies? More like a boring apartment with federal babysitters. But given that someone's threatening a witness in an active investigation, it's necessary. Agent Park's expression softened slightly. I know this isn't what you signed up for when you decided to expose your coworker's expense fraud. That felt like a lifetime ago. All I'd wanted was to prove Jake had stolen my client. Now I was apparently the target of a criminal conspiracy that involved securities fraud, identity theft, and federal witness intimidation. How did this get so big? I asked. Because you accidentally uncovered something that goes way beyond one corrupt employee. Jake Morrison was small time compared to what we're finding now. She gathered her files. Someone's been using Morrison and Associates as a front for major financial crimes, and they're willing to destroy anyone who gets too close to the truth. Including me. Especially you. You're the thread that, when pulled, could unravel everything they've built. Agent Park stood up, scanning the coffee shop one more time. Pack a bag for 2 weeks. And don't tell anyone where you're going, not family, not friends, not anyone. Your life might depend on it. As I walked to my car, trying to process the fact that I was about to disappear into federal witness protection, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number, another message that made my blood freeze. We know where your parents live. The safe house turned out to be a bland 2-bedroom apartment in a suburb 40 minutes outside the city, complete with Agent Park stationed in the living room and enough frozen dinners to survive a small apocalypse. I'd been there for 3 days, watching mindless TV and trying not to think about the threat against my parents, when Agent Park got a call that changed everything. We found the leak, she announced, hanging up her phone. And it's not what we expected. I muted the cooking show I'd been pretending to watch. What do you mean? Margaret Henley from your HR department. She's been feeding information to someone outside the company for months. Agent Park sat down across from me, her expression grim. The same Margaret who first tipped you off about Jake's expense irregularities. My world tilted sideways. Margaret? That's impossible. She's the one who helped expose Jake in the first place. Think about it. She had access to everyone's expense reports, all the client files, personnel information, everything someone would need to orchestrate this kind of fraud. And she was perfectly positioned to monitor the federal investigation from the inside. I thought back to that conversation by my cubicle, how Margaret had seemed to know exactly what to say to point me toward Jake's fake expenses. You're saying she manipulated me into discovering the evidence? We think she needed Jake exposed because he was getting sloppy, drawing too much attention. Better to sacrifice one small player than risk the entire operation. Agent Park pulled out a tablet. We've been monitoring her communications since yesterday. Look at this. She showed me a text exchange between Margaret and an unknown contact. The messages made my stomach drop. Witness is secured in federal custody. Proceed with Phase 3. Are you certain they suspect the real scope? They think it's just Morrison. Perfect cover. Phase 3. I asked weakly. We're still piecing it together, but it looks like they're planning to pin everything on you and Jake while the real players disappear. Agent Park's phone rang again, and her expression darkened as she listened. Understood. We're moving now. She hung up and started gathering files with urgent efficiency. We need to leave. Now. What's happening? Margaret Henley hasn't shown up for work in 2 days. TSA flagged her trying to board a flight to the Cayman Islands this morning with a passport that isn't in her real name. Agent Park tossed me my jacket. She's running, which means the people she's working for know we're closing in. What about my parents? Local FBI is moving them to protective custody as we speak. But we need to get you somewhere more secure. She opened the apartment door, scanning the hallway. The safe house locations are compromised if Margaret had access to witness protection protocols. We rushed down the stairs to her unmarked sedan, and I noticed another car starting its engine in the parking lot behind us. Agent Park noticed too, her hand moving instinctively toward her weapon. Get in and stay down, she ordered. As we pulled out of the complex, the other car followed at a distance. My heart hammered as Agent Park made a series of quick turns, her eyes constantly checking the rearview mirror. Still there? I asked from my crouched position in the passenger seat. Still there. But we're about to find out who we're really dealing with. She grabbed her radio. This is Park. I need immediate backup at my location. We have active surveillance on a federal witness. The radio crackled back. All units in your area are responding to a reported shooting at Morrison and Associates. Stand by. Agent Park's face went white. That's not a coincidence. As sirens wailed in the distance and the mysterious car continued following us through suburban streets, I realized that whatever Margaret and her associates had planned was already in motion. And somehow, I was still at the center of it all. The car behind us made no attempt to hide its presence as Agent Park navigated through increasingly heavy traffic. Every time we stopped at a red light, I could see the driver's silhouette in the rearview mirror, a figure in dark sunglasses who seemed utterly calm despite tailing federal agents. This is either the world's most confident criminal, or... Agent Park's voice trailed off as her radio crackled to life. Agent Park, this is Director Walsh. What's your current status? Transporting witness to secondary safe location. We have a tail, possibly hostile. Negative on secondary location. Return to field office immediately. We've had developments in the Morrison case that require immediate witness testimony. Agent Park's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. Sir, we're actively being followed. Returning to the field office could compromise witness security. Agent Park, that's a direct order. The case is breaking open, and we need your witness here now. She clicked off the radio and muttered something under her breath that definitely wasn't appropriate for federal communications. Something's wrong. Director Walsh is in D.C. today for budget meetings. I saw his calendar myself. My stomach dropped. So who was that? Someone with access to federal radio frequencies and knowledge of internal protocols. She made a sharp right turn without signaling. Someone who really wants us to come in. The car behind us matched the turn perfectly, maintaining the same distance. But now I noticed something else. 2 more vehicles had joined our little convoy, one black SUV ahead of us and another sedan that had fallen in behind our original tail. Agent Park, I said quietly, I think we're surrounded. She'd noticed too, her eyes darting between mirrors as she calculated our options. We were on a busy commercial street with strip malls and chain restaurants on both sides, nowhere to make a dramatic escape without endangering civilians. Listen carefully, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. In about 30 seconds, I'm going to pull into that McDonald's parking lot ahead. When I do, you're going to get out and walk calmly into the restaurant. Go straight to the bathroom and lock the door. Don't come out until you hear me say the words, all clear. What about you? I'm going to find out who these people are and what they want. She checked her weapon discreetly. But I need you somewhere safe while I do it. We pulled into the McDonald's lot, and I followed her instructions exactly. Casual walk, no running, just another customer heading inside. But through the restaurant's windows, I watched Agent Park get out of our car just as all 3 vehicles disgorged their occupants. What happened next wasn't a dramatic shootout from an action movie. It was a very civil conversation between Agent Park and 6 people in business attire who flashed what looked like official credentials. No weapons drawn, no shouting, just an increasingly animated discussion that ended with Agent Park reluctantly handing over her car keys. Then one of them pointed directly at the McDonald's, and I realized they knew exactly where I was. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Park's number, come outside. Everything's resolved. These are federal marshals here to escort us to a more secure location. But through the window, I could see Agent Park standing with her hands clasped behind her back in a way that suggested they weren't clasped voluntarily. And the person holding her phone was definitely not Agent Park. I was trapped in a McDonald's bathroom, watching federal agents, or people pretending to be federal agents, prepared to collect me like a package. My real federal protection was compromised, my fake federal protection was waiting in the parking lot, and I had no idea who to trust. The bathroom door handle turned slowly, testing whether it was locked. Ma'am. A polite voice called through the door. We're here to help you. Agent Park sent us to get you. Through the small window above the sink, I could see a fire exit behind the restaurant. It was going to be a very tight fit, and I had no idea what was waiting on the other side. But staying wasn't an option anymore. The bathroom window was definitely not designed for emergency escapes. I had to remove the screen with my car keys, creating enough noise that I was sure everyone in the parking lot could hear me. But the voices outside the bathroom door were getting more insistent, and I could hear what sounded like keys jingling. They were getting ready to override the lock. I squeezed through the window opening like the world's most desperate contortionist, dropping into the alley behind the McDonald's with all the grace of a sack of potatoes. My ankle screamed in protest, but I could still walk. The fire exit was 10 feet away, leading to a strip of smaller businesses that backed up to a residential neighborhood. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Agent Park, we can see you on security cameras. There's nowhere to run. Come back and let us help you. Security cameras. Of course. I pulled my hood up and started moving, trying to stay close to dumpsters and delivery trucks that might block the camera angles. The businesses behind the McDonald's were a weird mix, a dry cleaner, a tax preparation office, and what looked like a computer repair shop with bars on the windows. That's when I spotted something that made my heart stop, a Morrison & Associates company car parked behind the tax office. The same model sedan that Jake used to drive to client meetings. Which meant either this was the world's strangest coincidence, or the people chasing me were connected to my old company in ways I hadn't imagined. I ducked behind a dumpster and called the one person I hoped could still help me, David Kellerman, my attorney. But instead of his voice, I got a message I'd never heard before, this number is temporarily disconnected. Please try your call again later. Temporarily disconnected. Attorneys don't just disconnect their phones during active federal cases. Unless something had happened to him too. The alley suddenly felt very quiet. Too quiet. I realized I couldn't hear traffic from the main road anymore, which meant someone had probably blocked the street access. They were creating a perimeter, and I was in the center of it. My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered it. You're making this much harder than it needs to be. The voice was calm, professional, with just a hint of irritation. We're not here to hurt you. We're here to clean up a mess that's gotten out of control. Who is this? Someone who's been watching this situation develop for months. Jake Morrison was an idiot who got greedy. Margaret Henley was useful until she started making mistakes. But you're the variable we didn't account for. I pressed myself closer to the dumpster, scanning for any movement in the alley. What do you want? We want to make you a deal. A very generous deal that solves both of our problems. I could hear papers rustling in the background. $2 million, deposited in an offshore account of your choosing. In exchange, you disappear for a year. Maybe 2. Take a long vacation somewhere tropical while the federal investigation concludes without your testimony. $2 million. Enough money to pay off my student loans, buy a house, start over somewhere completely new. All I had to do was abandon the truth and let criminals escape justice. And if I say no, then you become another casualty of this unfortunate situation. Jake Morrison won't be the only Morrison & Associates employee who had an unfortunate accident while trying to flee the country. The threat was delivered so casually it took a moment to sink in. They weren't just talking about discrediting me or ruining my career anymore. They were talking about making me disappear permanently. I need time to think about it, I said, stalling while I tried to figure out my next move. You have 30 seconds to walk back to that McDonald's parking lot, or the offer expires permanently. Through a gap in the dumpster, I saw movement at both ends of the alley. They weren't bluffing about having me surrounded. But they'd made one crucial mistake, they'd told me exactly how much this was worth to them. $2 million meant this conspiracy was worth tens of millions, maybe more. My 30 seconds were almost up, and I could see figures moving closer from both ends of the alley. But as I crouched behind the dumpster, something caught my eye that changed everything, a small security camera mounted on the back of the computer repair shop, its red recording light blinking steadily. If these people were as connected as they seemed, they'd already considered the McDonald's cameras. But a tiny independent business tucked away in an alley? That might be the one angle they'd missed. I pulled out my phone and started recording a voice memo, speaking as quietly as possible while keeping my eyes on the approaching figures. My name is. If something happens to me, Margaret Henley from Morrison and Associates HR has been running securities fraud through offshore accounts. They just offered me $2 million to disappear, which means their operation is worth at least 10 times that. The real Agent Park is being held against her will in the McDonald's parking lot. David Kellerman, my attorney, has had his phone disconnected. This is bigger than just Jake Morrison. Time's up, the voice on my phone said coldly. Last chance. Instead of answering, I did something that probably saved my life. I forwarded the voice memo to every contact in my phone simultaneously, my parents, college friends, former coworkers, even my student loan servicer. If they wanted to make me disappear, they'd have to explain why dozens of people just received evidence of their crimes. Then I stood up from behind the dumpster with my hands visible. I'm here, I called out. Let's talk. The figure approaching from my left was a woman in a navy business suit who looked like she could have been Margaret's sister, same professional demeanor, same dead eyes. The man from my right wore the kind of expensive watch that suggested this criminal enterprise was very profitable indeed. Smart choice, the woman said. Though the mass text message to your contact list was unnecessary drama. My blood chilled. They'd been monitoring my phone in real time. Just insurance, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Nothing that can't be explained away if we reach an agreement. Oh, we'll reach an agreement. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Though the terms have changed somewhat since your little performance just now. Changed how? The offer is now 1 million instead of 2. And instead of a tropical vacation, you'll be taking a more permanent leave of absence. They stepped closer, and I realized with crystal clarity that I'd just negotiated my way from bribery to murder. The recording I'd sent to everyone might be evidence, but it wouldn't help me if I wasn't alive to testify. That's when the computer repair shop's back door opened with a loud creak. Y'all making too much noise out here, called a gravelly voice. Some of us trying to work. An elderly man in coveralls emerged, looking thoroughly annoyed. He glanced at the three of us with a weary expression of someone who'd seen every type of urban drama imaginable. Sorry, the woman said smoothly. Just having a business discussion. We'll keep it down. Business discussion, huh? The old man's eyes lingered on something behind them. That why you got federal agents zip-tied in that McDonald's parking lot? The woman and man exchanged glances, their professional masks slipping slightly. Sir, I think there's been some confusion, the man started. Ain't no confusion. Been watching y'all on my security system for the past 10 minutes. The old man held up a tablet showing multiple camera angles. Already sent the footage to my grandson. He's a detective with Metro PD. The woman's hand moved toward her jacket, but the old man was faster than he looked. Wouldn't recommend that, sweetheart. Jerome's already en route with backup. In the distance, I could hear sirens approaching, Real ones this time. The sirens were getting closer, but the woman in the navy suit didn't look nearly as concerned as I thought she should. Instead, she pulled out her phone and made a quick call. Jerome's not coming, she said calmly to the old man. Your grandson just got called to a suspicious package situation at the city courthouse. Bomb squad's been requested. Funny how these emergencies always seem to happen at the most convenient times. My heart sank as I watched the old man's confident expression crumble. They weren't just monitoring my phone, they had connections throughout local law enforcement, maybe even federal agencies. How else could they coordinate fake emergencies to redirect police resources? However, the woman continued, checking her watch, we do have a small window before they realized the courthouse call was a false alarm. So let's expedite this conversation. The man stepped closer, and I noticed he was wearing latex gloves under his expensive suit jacket. Professional criminals didn't wear latex gloves for negotiation meetings. The new offer is simple, he said. You're going to walk back to that parking lot and publicly recant everything you've told the FBI. Claim you made it all up because you were angry about losing a promotion. Jake Morrison becomes the fall guy for some minor expense fraud, and everyone else walks away clean. And if I refuse? Then you and your helpful friend here become victims of a tragic mugging gone wrong. These urban alleys can be so dangerous. His smile was pure ice. Of course, that option requires us to also visit your parents in their new, protective custody location. The threat against my parents hit like a physical blow. If they knew where the FBI had moved them, then this conspiracy reached deeper into federal agencies than I'd imagined. How do I know you won't kill me anyway? I asked, stalling for time while trying to figure out any possible escape route. Because a dead witness creates more problems than a discredited one. We want you alive but neutralized. The woman checked her phone again. 2 minutes until patrol units get redirected back to this area. Time to decide. That's when the old man surprised everyone by laughing, a wheezy sound that echoed off the alley walls. Y'all really think Jerome's my only grandson? He tapped his tablet screen. Been live streaming this whole conversation to my other grandson. The one who works for Channel 7 News. The woman's professional composure finally cracked. That's impossible. We jammed all cellular signals in this area. Jammed cellular, sure. But my shop's got hardwired internet, and Jerome upgraded my whole security system last month. Fiber optic connection straight to the cloud. The old man's grin revealed several missing teeth. This conversation's been broadcasting live for the past 5 minutes. I could see both of them processing this information, realizing that their carefully controlled situation had just become a public relations nightmare. You can bribe or threaten individual witnesses, but you can't silence thousands of people watching a live stream. The man pulled out his phone and dialed frantically. We need immediate extraction. The situation is compromised. Yes, I understand the implications. No, it's too late for damage control. Your bosses aren't going to be happy about this, I said, feeling brave for the first time since this nightmare started. Our bosses have contingency plans for contingency plans, the woman replied coldly. This just means we accelerate the timeline for Phase 4. What's Phase 4? She smiled, but there was something almost pitying in her expression. You'll find out soon enough. along with everyone else who thought they were clever enough to outsmart us. A black helicopter appeared over the alley, its rotors drowning out everything else. As a rope ladder dropped down, I realized these people had resources that went far beyond corporate fraud. This was about to get much worse. The helicopter hovered overhead as both criminals grabbed the rope ladder, but something unexpected happened. Instead of ascending, they both collapsed to the ground within seconds. The old man was holding what looked like a modified TV remote, grinning widely. EMP device, he explained casually. Scrambles electronic devices, including whatever fancy equipment they're carrying. Jerome ain't my only grandson, got one who's military contractor too. The woman writhed on the ground, clutching her chest where I now noticed a small device had been attached to her jacket. Heart, pacemaker. She gasped. Probably should have mentioned you had medical implants before trying to kidnap folks, the old man said unsympathetically. The helicopter pilot, realizing his extraction team was down, began ascending rapidly. But that's when real federal vehicles, actual FBI units, not the fake ones from earlier, swarmed into both ends of the alley with a precision that suggested they'd been watching this unfold. Agent Park emerged from the lead vehicle, looking furious but unharmed. Sorry for the delay, she called out. Had to wait for them to reveal the full scope of their operation. You were never actually captured. I asked in disbelief. Federal theater. We'd been tracking this conspiracy for months, but needed them to expose their resources. She gestured toward the helicopter, which was now being forced down by what appeared to be military aircraft. Turns out Morrison and Associates was just a front for a money laundering operation connected to several defense contractors. The man who threatened me was now conscious but zip-tied, his expensive watch being catalogued as evidence. You have no idea what you've stumbled into, he snarled at me. This goes to the highest levels of. Yeah, shadowy conspiracy, very impressive, Agent Park cut him off. We've been building this case for 2 years. Your organization's been stealing Pentagon contracts and selling classified information to foreign bidders. Jake Morrison was small potatoes compared to what you've been running. As paramedics attended to the woman with the pacemaker, I finally understood the scope of what I'd accidentally exposed. My client research. Pinnacle Industries. Defense contractor working on classified manufacturing projects. When you started getting close to landing that account, it threatened their entire intelligence gathering operation. Agent Park handed me a bottle of water. Your persistence in pursuing that client is what first flagged our attention to Morrison and Associates. So Jake really was just a convenient scapegoat. Jake was greedy and stupid, but useful to them. Margaret Henley was their inside person for years, feeding information about which companies to target, which employees to corrupt or eliminate. She paused. You were supposed to be eliminated quietly after Jake's arrest. Your stubbornness in pursuing the truth made you too dangerous to ignore. The old man was being interviewed by federal agents, his security footage apparently containing evidence of several other crimes that had occurred in his alley over the past months. Been wondering why so many business meetings kept happening behind my shop, he chuckled. 3 months later, I was sitting in the conference room at Morrison and Associates, now under new management and renamed Pinnacle Solutions Group, signing the papers for my promotion to senior associate. The Pinnacle Industries deal had gone through after all, worth even more than originally projected once the security concerns were resolved. Jake Morrison was serving 5 years for fraud. Margaret Henley had pled guilty to racketeering charges. The mysterious organization behind them was still being unraveled by federal investigators, but the immediate threats were over. My student loans were finally manageable thanks to the promotion and the consulting fees I'd earned helping the FBI understand the company's client relationships. More importantly, I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't petty at all, sometimes it's just refusing to give up until the truth wins. The new company nameplate on my desk read, Senior Associate, Integrity Division. Perfect.